The day I found Ashlyn and her friends sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and looking at me like I was the intruder in my own home, that was the moment something inside me finally broke. Not with a crash or a bang, just a quiet snap, like a thread that had been pulled too tight for too long. Let me tell you how I got there. My name is Sylvia Whitmore. I'm 68 years old, and for 35 years I worked as a nurse at Rehoboth Beach General Hospital. Nothing glamorous about it. Just honest work that gave me dignity and purpose, and enough savings to buy myself a little piece of heaven, a modest 3-bedroom beach house with an ocean view. I purchased it 20 years ago, long before property values here skyrocketed. It's nothing fancy. Simple wooden floors that creak when the humidity rises, a wraparound porch where I've watched countless sunrises, the constant rhythm of waves that lulls me to sleep every night. That house represented everything I'd worked for, everything I'd earned on my own. My son Derek is 42 now. He married Ashlyn when he was 28 and she was 25. I remember their wedding day clearly, her perfect white smile, the way her hand rested possessively on Derek's arm during the reception, how she barely made eye contact with me when I offered to help with anything. "We've got it all handled, Sylvia," she'd said, using my first name from day one, never Mom or even Mrs. Whitmore. Just Sylvia, like we were distant acquaintances. I wanted to like her. I truly did, for Derek's sake. Derek has always been ambitious. Too ambitious sometimes. He works in corporate sales, always chasing the next big commission, the next promotion. Ashlyn has never worked. Not once in the 14 years they've been married. They have 2 children, Cody, who's 15 now, and Madison, 13. Beautiful kids, smart, but with something in their eyes that sometimes worries me. A certain entitlement that wasn't there in Derek when he was their age. It all started 8 months ago, back in March. The phone rang while I was pruning my indoor plants, getting ready for spring. "Mom," Derek said, his voice carrying that familiar tone, the one he uses when he wants something. "I need a favor." The late afternoon sun was streaming through my living room windows. I remember setting down my pruning shears, already feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. "What is it, honey?" I asked. "Ashlyn's family is coming to visit in April. They want to spend a weekend at the beach. Could they use your beach house? Just for 2 nights. You weren't planning to be there that weekend, were you?" I wasn't, and it seemed like a reasonable request. Family helping family. "Of course," I said. "Just make sure they lock up when they leave." "You're the best, Mom. I'll text you the dates." 3 weeks later, Derek called again. I was in the grocery store, trying to decide between 2 different brands of coffee. "Mom, I hate to ask, but we've got a situation." His voice sounded strained. "The contractors started work on our house renovation, and there's dust everywhere. Ashlyn's getting really stressed about it. The kids are complaining. Could we possibly use the beach house for a few weeks? Just until the renovation is done? It would really help us out." I hesitated. A few weeks was different from a weekend. I'd been planning to spend some time there myself once the weather warmed up. "How long is a few weeks, Derek?" 3, maybe 4 at most. The contractor promised it would be done by then. I pictured Ashlyn, stressed and irritable, the kids coughing from construction dust. He was my son. They were my grandchildren. "All right," I said. "The spare key is under the blue flower pot on the porch." "Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver." Those weeks turned into months. April passed, then May. Each time I called to ask how the renovation was going, Derek had a new excuse. Delays with permits, a problem with the plumbing, materials on back order. "It's so frustrating," he'd say, "but we're really grateful for the beach house. The kids love being near the ocean." I started to feel uneasy. Something wasn't right, but I pushed the feeling away. After all, what kind of mother denies her son and his family a safe place to stay? In early June, I decided to drive down to Rehoboth Beach. I hadn't been to my house in months, and I missed the sound of the waves, the salt air, the way the light changed over the water throughout the day. I didn't tell Derek I was coming. I'm not sure why. Perhaps some part of me already knew what I would find. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was a perfect blue, the kind that makes you feel like all is right with the world. I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed unfamiliar beach toys scattered across the front yard. A pink bicycle I'd never seen before leaned against the porch railing. Wind chimes I hadn't hung tinkled in the breeze. I used my key to open the front door. The smell hit me first. Unfamiliar perfume mixed with something else. Something that said this wasn't my house anymore. The living room was barely recognizable. My carefully chosen furniture had been rearranged. The sofa I'd saved for months to buy was stained with what looked like spilled soda. There were sandy footprints everywhere. On the coffee table sat magazines I didn't subscribe to, nail polish bottles, and half-empty bags of chips. I walked to the kitchen in a daze. My dishes, the blue and white set my mother had given me, were piled haphazardly in the sink. Some were chipped. The refrigerator was plastered with drawings, school schedules, and photographs of people I didn't know. Upstairs was worse. In the master bedroom, my bedroom, Ashlyn's clothes filled the closet. Her makeup was spread across my dresser. The quilt my grandmother had made, which I'd always kept carefully folded at the foot of the bed, was crumpled on the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. This wasn't a family staying temporarily in my house. This was a family that had moved in, taken over, as if I didn't exist. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted me back to reality. I went downstairs just as Derek walked in, carrying grocery bags. "Mom!" His surprise seemed genuine. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my house," I said quietly. "What's going on, Derek?" He set the bags down, not meeting my eyes. "The renovation is taking longer than expected. I was going to call you." "When?" "It's been months, Derek, and this—" I gestured around us. "This isn't staying temporarily. You've moved in." "Not permanently," he said quickly, "just until the house is done. Ashlyn really loves it here. The kids are happier. It's been good for all of us." "When will you go back home?" He looked away. "The contractor says maybe another month, possibly 2. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake on the sofa. They'd taken over my bedroom after all, listening to the ocean and trying to understand how I'd lost control of my own house. I thought about all the times Derek had called me over the years, always when he needed something. Money for a down payment on their first house. Babysitting when Ashlyn wanted a weekend away. And now, my beach house. I thought about how Ashlyn never thanked me, how she barely looked me in the eye, how she'd redecorated my house without asking. The next morning, I found Ashlyn in the kitchen, dressed in yoga clothes, scrolling through her phone. "Good morning, Sylvia," she said, as if this were her house and I was the guest. "Derek told me you stopped by. We weren't expecting you." "This is my house, Ashlyn. I shouldn't need to announce when I'm coming." She looked up, her perfect eyebrows slightly raised. "Of course. It's just that we've settled into a routine here, and it's a bit disruptive when someone shows up unannounced." Someone. Not you. Someone. As if I were a stranger. "I noticed you've made some changes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just a few things to make it more comfortable for the kids. The furniture you had was a bit dated and not very practical for a family." I looked around the kitchen. New coffee maker, new toaster, new chairs around my old table. And the porch furniture? "Oh, we needed more seating for when we have friends over. The old chairs were falling apart anyway." They weren't. I'd painted them myself just last summer. "When exactly are you planning to move back to your house, Ashlyn?" She sighed, as if I were being difficult. "Derek's handling all that with the contractor. You know how these things go, always delays. But we're so grateful you've let us stay here. It's been wonderful for Madison and Cody to spend time at the beach." That afternoon, I walked alone on the shore, letting the cold Atlantic water wash over my feet. I felt hollow inside, invisible in my own life. I thought about confronting Derek again, demanding they leave. But then what? Would I be the bad guy, the selfish grandmother who kicked out her son and grandchildren? I drove back to my apartment that evening, telling Derek I'd come back in a few weeks to check on things. He seemed relieved to see me go. In July, I received a call from my old neighbor in Rehoboth, Elaine. "Sylvia, I thought you should know," she said hesitantly. There have been a lot of different people staying at your house on weekends. Big groups, parties that go late. I wasn't sure if you were renting it out or what. My heart sank. What do you mean, different people? Well, your son and his family are there during the week, but on weekends, especially holiday weekends, there are other families, different cars in the driveway every Friday. They leave on Sunday. I assumed you knew. I didn't. I called Derek immediately. Are you renting out my house on weekends? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. A pause. Then, not exactly renting. Some friends of Ashlyn's from her college days asked if they could use it for a weekend. They contributed to the utilities. It seemed fair since you weren't using it anyway. Fair? My voice shook. You didn't ask me, Derek. You didn't even tell me. Mom, it's not a big deal. They're very respectful, and it helps offset the costs of us being here. What costs? You're not paying rent. Another pause. Well, the utilities have gone up with 4 of us living there, and we've had to buy some things for the house. Things I didn't ask for or need, I said. Derek, I want you out of the house. This has gone on long enough. Silence on the other end. Then, Mom, Ashlyn has already planned Madison's birthday party there. In August. It's a big deal. She's turning 13. All her friends from school are coming. We can't cancel now. Madison would be devastated. I closed my eyes, felt the trap closing around me. And after the party? We'll be out by the end of August, I promise. I didn't believe him, but I also couldn't bear the thought of ruining my granddaughter's birthday. So I agreed. 1 more month. August came. I wasn't invited to Madison's party. I saw the photos on Facebook. My porch decorated with pink and gold balloons, a huge table of sweets, dozens of teenagers in swimsuits running between my house and the beach. Ashlyn had tagged the location as our beach house. Not a single mention of me. Not one acknowledgement that this was my home they were using. I canceled my plans to visit in August. I couldn't bear to see what else they had changed, what else they had taken over. In September, I decided enough was enough. I drove to Rehoboth without calling first, arriving early on a Tuesday morning. The door was locked. I used my key. Inside, I found Ashlyn and 2 women I'd never seen before sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee. They looked up as I entered, their expressions shifting from surprise to something else, something that made me feel like an intruder. Sylvia, Ashlyn said, not getting up, you should have called to say you were coming. The other women exchanged glances. I didn't realize I needed permission to enter my own house, I said quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell. Ashlyn finally stood up. Ladies, this is Derek's mother, she said to her friends. Sylvia, these are my friends from college, Jen and Tara. I nodded stiffly. Nice to meet you. I'd like to speak with Derek, please. He's at work, Ashlyn said. He won't be back until tonight. Then, I'd like to speak with you privately. Ashlyn's friends took the hint and gathered their purses. We should get going anyway, one of them said. Thanks for the coffee, Ash. Text me about next weekend. Next weekend? They were still planning to use my house. After they left, I faced Ashlyn across the kitchen. August is over, I said. You promised you'd be out by now. Ashlyn crossed her arms. Derek is handling the renovation schedule. I thought you were happy to help out the family. Derek always says how generous you are. Generous. The word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. I've been generous, I said. But this is my house, Ashlyn, not yours. I want to know exactly when you're leaving. She looked at me with cool eyes. I'll have Derek call you. He knows the timeline better than I do. I went upstairs to what had once been my bedroom. It was completely transformed now. New bedding, new curtains, Ashlyn's clothes everywhere, her perfume hanging in the air. I looked out the window at the gray September ocean. The wind was picking up. Storm coming. I left without saying another word to Ashlyn. What was the point? She wasn't listening. None of them were. That night, I called my younger brother, Vincent. He's 63 and lives in Wilmington. He's always been the practical one in our family, the problem solver. They're taking advantage of you, Sylvia, he said after I told him everything. You know that, right? I did, but hearing him say it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What should I do? I asked. That house is yours, he said firmly. "You don't need their permission to take it back." He was right. And suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next day I called a locksmith. Not one from Rehoboth. I didn't want word getting back to Derek before I was ready. I hired someone from 2 towns over. "I need all the locks changed," I told him. "Every door, inside and out." He arrived that afternoon. Derek and Ashlyn were both out. Him at work, her at some lunch with friends. The kids were at school. The locksmith worked quickly, replacing every lock in the house. When he finished, I handed him a generous tip. "Thank you," I said. "This means more to me than you know." After he left, I went through the house methodically. I locked every bedroom door, every closet, the bathroom upstairs, the storage room, the back porch. I left open only the living room, empty now of all furniture except for a single folding chair I'd brought with me, and the downstairs bathroom. In the kitchen, I left a note on the table. "The house is closed. You have 1 week to collect your belongings. After that, I will be living here permanently." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since this all began, I had taken back control. Derek called 3 hours later. He was furious. "What the hell, Mom?" he shouted into the phone. "Ashlyn can't even get into the house. The kids' stuff is locked inside. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time for you to go home, Derek," I said calmly. "To your actual home, the one you own. We can't just leave overnight. We have lives here now. Ashlyn is crying. The kids don't understand why their grandmother would do this to them." "Where will you live, Derek?" I asked quietly. A pause. Then, "What do you mean?" "Your house, the one that's been under renovation. Where will you live if not there?" Silence. Then, so quietly, I almost didn't hear him. "The renovation finished 2 months ago." 2 months. They could have gone home. But they didn't. Because it was easier to stay. Because I had always said yes. "You lied to me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Not exactly," he stammered. The kids were settled in school here, and it seemed easier to stay until when, Derek? Until I died and left you the house in my will?" "Mom, that's not fair." "No," I agreed. "None of this is fair. You have 1 week. Then I'm moving in, and anything left behind goes to charity." I hung up. Over the next few days, Derek tried everything. He called repeatedly, his tone shifting from anger to pleading. Ashlyn sent text messages saying I was destroying the family, that the children were heartbroken, that I was being selfish and cruel. Cody texted me a single message. "Grandma, why?" That one nearly broke me. I almost called Derek to say they could have more time, but then I remembered how it felt to walk into my own house and feel like a stranger, to see my things moved, replaced, discarded, to be erased. No, I had to stand firm. On the last day of the week, Vincent came with me to oversee the removal of their belongings. Derek and Ashlyn didn't show up. They sent a moving company instead. I sat on my porch, watching as strangers carried out furniture that wasn't mine, boxes of clothes, toys, kitchen appliances I'd never bought. "You okay?" Vincent asked, sitting beside me. "I will be," I said, looking out at the ocean. The September sun was setting, turning the water to gold. This is still my place. They didn't take that from me. October arrived with a chill in the air. I moved back into my beach house. I bought a new sofa, planted flowers in the garden. Each morning I had coffee on the porch, listening to the seagulls and the rhythm of the waves. Derek didn't call for weeks, until mid-October when he showed up unannounced. He knocked on the door. When I opened it, he was standing there alone, looking tired and older somehow. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside to let him pass. We sat on the porch, the place where I'd always felt most at peace. He looked out at the ocean for a long time before speaking. "Ashlyn and I are having problems," he finally said. I didn't respond. "She's furious with you," he continued. "I tried to defend her, but deep down I knew you were right. We got used to living beyond our means. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. I was afraid we'd lose everything. It was easier to use your house than face reality." He started to cry then, something I hadn't seen him do since he was a boy. He said he was sorry, that he had used me, that Ashlyn had too, that they'd taught the children to do the same. I took his hand. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't, but I told him I understood and that he needed to fix things, not with me, but with himself. He nodded. We sat in silence, listening to the ocean. Weeks later, Derek called to tell me that he and Ashlyn were in therapy, that they were selling some things, learning to live with less, that Ashlyn had finally apologized, not directly to me, but to him. It was a start. I invited Cody and Madison to spend a weekend with me, without their parents. We talked. I explained why I had done what I did. I didn't apologize, but I listened. Madison cried. Cody was quiet, but in the end, he hugged me. Today, the house is mine again. Sometimes Derek visits alone. Ashlyn hasn't returned. Maybe she never will. I don't know. But I've learned something important. Generosity without boundaries isn't love. It's erasure. And I couldn't erase myself just to make others happy. The ocean still crashes against the shore. The seagulls still cry overhead. And I'm still here, whole, finally at peace. Have you ever had to take back something that was rightfully yours? Something more precious than just a house or possessions? I've learned that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love the most. For 35 years, I worked as a nurse, caring for others. I measured my worth by what I could give, how I could help. It became my identity, the generous one, the giver, the one who never said no. When did that become a weakness instead of a strength? Winter came to Rehoboth Beach, bringing empty streets and gray skies. I stayed in my beach house rather than returning to my apartment in town. There was something healing about watching the seasons change from my porch. The violent winter storms, the quiet snowfall, the way the ocean never stopped, never apologized for its power. I began to change too. Small things at first. I painted the living room a color I'd always wanted, a soft blue-gray that reminded me of the ocean on foggy mornings. I hung artwork I loved, not what matched the furniture. I rearranged rooms to suit myself, not guests or family. One cold January morning, I received a package. No return address, just my name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a small wooden box and a note. Found this while cleaning out some things. Thought you might want it back. Ashlyn. The box contained my mother's silver bracelet. I'd noticed it was missing months ago, but assumed I'd misplaced it. Now I understood. Ashlyn had taken it. Was this her version of an apology, or just guilt making her return what was never hers to take? I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, feeling its familiar weight. Some things can be returned. Others, trust, respect, time, cannot. In February, Cody called me. His voice had deepened since summer, sounding more like a young man than a boy. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Were you scared?" "When you changed the locks, I mean. Were you scared Dad would never talk to you again?" I looked out at the winter ocean, considering his question carefully. "Yes," I finally said. I was terrified. But sometimes being brave isn't about not feeling fear. It's about doing what's right even when you're afraid. "Dad and Mom are selling the house," he said. "We're moving to a smaller place. Dad says we need to live within our means now. How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Mad, I guess, but also, I keep thinking about what you did, standing up for yourself. It was kind of badass, Grandma." I laughed, surprised. "That's not a word people usually associate with their grandmothers." "Maybe they should," he said. "I told Dad I want to come stay with you for spring break, if that's okay." "I'd like that very much," I said, my heart full. After we hung up, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the winter sun sparkle on the water. I thought about how much had changed in less than a year, how I had changed. Have you ever realized that setting boundaries isn't selfish? It's necessary for genuine love to exist? That by saying no to being used, you're saying yes to being respected? In March, exactly 1 year since Derek's first call asking to use the house, Madison came to visit. 13 going on 30, with her mother's beauty and something else. A thoughtfulness I hadn't seen before. We walked on the beach, collecting shells and watching sandpipers dart in and out of the waves. She was quiet for a long time before speaking. "Mom says you were mean to change the locks," she finally said, "but Dad says you were teaching us an important lesson." "What do you think?" I asked. She picked up a perfect scallop shell, turning it over in her hands. I think I didn't see you before. You were just Grandma. Someone who was supposed to give us things and help us. I didn't think about what you wanted or needed." "That's a very mature observation," I said. "I'm sorry," she said, looking up at me with eyes so like her father's. "For not seeing you." I put my arm around her shoulders. "I'm seeing you now too, Madison. The real you. Not just Derek's daughter or Ashlyn's daughter. Just you." She smiled, tucking the shell into her pocket. "Can I come stay with you this summer? Just me? I want to learn how to paint like you do." "I'd like that," I said. "Very much." Spring arrived with soft rains and wildflowers pushing through the sand dunes. Derek called more regularly now. Our conversations were different, more honest, less performative. He told me about the smaller house they'd bought, how he was working on being more present, less focused on appearances. "Ashlyn's looking for a job," he said during one call. "Part-time, but it's a start." "That's good," I said. "How are things between you two?" A pause. "Better. Different. The therapist says we're making progress. She still doesn't want to talk about what happened with the beach house, though." "She doesn't need to talk to me about it," I said. "That's between you and her." "I know, but I think she's embarrassed. Ashamed, maybe." "Those aren't comfortable feelings," I said, "but they can be useful ones." In April, Vincent came to visit. We sat on the porch drinking wine as the sun set, just like we used to do when we were younger. "You seem different," he observed. "Stronger." "I feel different," I admitted, "like I finally know who I am." "You know what I think?" he said, refilling our glasses. "I think you knew all along. You just forgot for a while." Maybe he was right. Maybe I had always known my own worth, but had allowed others to make me doubt it. Not anymore. Summer returned to Rehoboth Beach, bringing tourists and warm breezes. One evening in June, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, a car pulled into my driveway. Derek got out, followed by Ashlyn. My breath caught in my throat. She hadn't been here since that day in September. They walked up to the porch together, not touching, but unified somehow. "Mom," Derek said, "is it okay if we talk to you?" I nodded, gesturing to the chairs. Ashlyn sat stiffly, her hands clasped in her lap. She looked older than I remembered, less perfect somehow, more human. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice quiet but steady. What I did, was wrong. We took advantage of your generosity. We treated your home like it was ours. We didn't respect your boundaries." I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Behind the perfect exterior was someone struggling, just like the rest of us. "Why?" I asked simply. She blinked, as if surprised by the question. "Why did we do it?" "No. Why are you apologizing now, after all this time?" She glanced at Derek, then back to me. "Because I finally understand what it feels like to lose something important. Our old house, our old life, it's gone. And it's my fault as much as anyone's. I kept wanting more, bigger, better. I never stopped to appreciate what we had." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me that." "We're not asking to stay here," Derek added quickly. "We just wanted to clear the air. Start fresh, maybe." "I'd like that," I said. And I meant it. They didn't stay long. As they were leaving, Ashlyn turned back. "Your house looks beautiful," she said. "It suits you." After they drove away, I sat in the gathering darkness, listening to the waves. There was no perfect resolution, no Hollywood ending where everything was magically fixed, just flawed people trying to do better, including me. In July, Madison came to stay for 2 weeks, as we'd planned. I taught her to paint watercolors on the beach. She taught me how to use Instagram. We cooked together, talked about books, watched the sunrise in comfortable silence. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing, she asked, "Grandma, are you lonely here by yourself?" I considered her question carefully. "There's a difference between being alone and being lonely," I said finally. "I'm alone here, yes, but I'm not lonely. I have my painting, my books, my walks on the beach. I have friends I meet for coffee. I have you and Cody and your dad visiting, and I have myself, someone I've come to like spending time with. She nodded thoughtfully. I think that's really cool. Most people seem scared to be by themselves. It can be scary at first, I admitted, but it can also be freeing. August brought Cody's visit, then Derek's. Not Ashlyn, we weren't there yet. Maybe we never would be, but that was okay too. As summer faded into fall, I celebrated my 69th birthday. Vincent and his wife threw me a small party at a restaurant overlooking the bay. Derek and the kids came, friends from my nursing days, my neighbor Elaine. After dinner, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in pinks and oranges, Derek raised his glass. To my mom, he said, who taught all of us, that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, that loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you, that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who get back up. I felt tears in my eyes as everyone clinked glasses. Later, as Derek walked me to my car, he said, I'm proud of you, Mom. I should have said that a long time ago. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand. I'm proud of you too, for doing the hard work of changing. It is hard, he admitted, every day, but worth it. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey of the past year and a half, the pain, the loss, the growth, the house that had become a battleground and was now, truly, a home again, my home. I thought about the woman I used to be, always accommodating, afraid to rock the boat, measuring my worth by what I gave to others, and the woman I am now, stronger, clearer, unafraid to take up space in my own life. The moon was full that night, casting a silver path across the water as I sat on my porch one last time before bed. I thought about how the ocean never apologizes for its tides, coming in, going out, following its own rhythm. Nature doesn't apologize for taking up space. Why should we? A year and a half ago, I would have said that the most important thing in life is to be generous, to put others first, to keep the peace at all costs. Now I know better. The most important thing is to be authentic, to honor your own worth, to understand that real love doesn't diminish you. It helps you become more fully yourself. My beach house stands as a testament to that truth. Its walls have witnessed both betrayal and healing. Its porch has held both tears and laughter. And I have learned that sometimes you have to lock a few doors to open the right ones. The ocean keeps rolling in day after day, constant yet ever-changing. Like me, like all of us. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles is the greatest comfort of all.